Look, old man, we don't have time for sob stories. The form is incomplete, your declared assets are zero, and frankly, your history of giving away money doesn't qualify you for aid. You're a burden. The caseworker didn't even look up, her voice dripping with contempt. Next. If you think judging someone based on their appearance or past mistakes is wrong, type respect in the comments. Elias Vance shifted uncomfortably in the hard plastic chair. His worn jacket felt thin against the chill of the impersonal office. 78 years etching themselves onto his face, not just in wrinkles, but in lines of quiet resilience and profound, understated sorrow. He wasn't just an old man, though that's all most people saw now. He was Elias Vance. Once that name had meant something. It had echoed across sprawling ranches, through boardrooms, and whispered in grateful communities. He'd been a millionaire, yes, the owner of one of the largest cattle operations in the state. A man whose handshake was his bond, whose generosity was legendary. But that was another lifetime, it seemed. The cattle market crash a decade ago had taken its toll, but it was his own choices that had ultimately left him with nothing. Not reckless spending, not lavish living. It was the promises kept, the hands he refused to fold when others were hurting. He'd used his fortune to bail out suppliers, keep loyal employees afloat, fund community projects that suddenly had no funding, and quietly, anonymously, help families facing medical crises or sudden loss. The biggest drain had come in the last few years of a sustained, massive effort to support the families of servicemen and women from his county, particularly those injured or lost overseas. He'd seen the toll it took, the financial ruin that often compounded the emotional devastation. His conscience, perhaps fueled by a past he rarely spoke of, wouldn't let him stand by. He'd sold off land, assets, everything, usually below market value to ensure quick help reached those who needed it most. His sprawling ranch, his legacy, was gone. The final act of dispersal had been just last week, liquefying the last significant piece of property he owned. A small, cherished plot with an old barn, to provide a down payment on a prosthetic for a young Marine veteran's child and cover a year's rent for his widowed mother. That act had left him with precisely what the caseworker had just stated. Zero declared assets. And now, needing help himself for the first time in his life, needing assistance with basic living expenses because his quiet pride had kept him from asking while he still had something left, he faced this. The cold, bureaucratic wall of indifference and judgment. I understand, Elias said softly, his voice raspy. He clutched the tattered envelope containing partial paperwork. I was just trying to explain the circumstances. Why there's nothing left. The caseworker sighed dramatically, tapping her pen on the desk. Circumstances? Mr. Vance, people lose money. They don't usually give it all away and then expect the state to step in. Your application lists philanthropy as the reason for asset depletion. We're not a charity reimbursement service. We're here for people in genuine need, not those who've made poor financial decisions. It wasn't poor decisions, Elias replied, a flicker of something, not anger, but weary conviction in his eyes. It was necessary. Necessary? The caseworker finally looked up, a smirk playing on her lips. Her name tag read Brenda. Brenda was young, perhaps early 30s, dressed in a sharp, inexpensive suit. Her makeup meticulously applied, her expression permanently set in a look of harried superiority. Necessary to go from millionaire to broke? Seems like a poor decision from where I'm sitting. Now, if you could just step aside, you're holding up the line. Behind Elias, a few other people shifted impatiently. Some avoided eye contact. Others looked with a mix of pity and disdain. They saw a failure, a cautionary tale. They didn't see the lives he had touched, the families he had saved from destitution, the principles he had upheld even when it cost him everything. Elias felt a familiar ache in his chest, heavier than usual today. It wasn't just the physical discomfort of aging or the gnawing worry about how he would pay for his small, cramped room. It was the deep, silent pain of being unseen, of having a lifetime of integrity reduced to a single, dismissive label. Burden. He had faced droughts, blizzards, market crashes, treacherous competitors, and personal tragedies. He had stood tall. But the casual cruelty of being deemed worthless by someone who knew nothing of his struggles or his sacrifices, that was a different kind of cold. "Brenda, is there a problem?" A man's voice, sharper and carrying more authority, cut through the air. He was the office supervisor, Mr. Harrison, mid-50s, balding, with a perpetually stressed expression. He surveyed the scene, his eyes lingering disapprovingly on Elias's worn appearance. "Just an applicant, Mr. Harrison," Brenda said, recovering her professional veneer, though the contempt still lingered in her tone. "Claiming he lost everything through philanthropy and expecting assistance. I've explained he doesn't meet the criteria based on asset history and depletion reasons." Mr. Harrison stepped closer, glancing briefly at Elias. Yes, the forms have to be filled out correctly. And we can't have people thinking this is some kind of reward for giving away their money. This is for genuine hardship." He looked at Elias with the same dismissive gaze as Brenda, perhaps even more so. "Sir, you need to understand the rules. Your past financial history, no matter how colorful, is irrelevant if you don't meet the current requirements. And quite frankly, giving away your entire fortune strikes us as reckless. We can't subsidize recklessness." Elias swallowed, his throat tight. Recklessness. The word stung more than burden. He had built his fortune on hard work, integrity, and careful planning. He had lost it deliberately, choosing compassion and duty over personal wealth. To have that twisted into recklessness by these functionaries was almost too much to bear. He thought of the young veteran's mother, the look of relief on her face when he'd handed her the check. Was that reckless? He thought of the families he'd helped send kids to college, the hospital bills he'd quietly paid. Was that reckless? "It wasn't reckless," Elias said again, his voice barely a whisper, but firm. "It was the right thing to do." Mr. Harrison scoffed. "The right thing according to who? Seems to me the right thing would have been to secure your own future, especially at your age." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice but not its harshness. "Look, I've seen your name on the application, Elias Vance. Yeah, the newspapers loved you for a while, the cattle king with a heart of gold. Wasn't it? Well, gold melts, Mr. Vance. And sentimentality doesn't pay the bills. Come back when you have proof of genuine, unavoidable hardship, not self-inflicted poverty." Elias flinched as if struck. Self-inflicted poverty. He stood there, a lifetime of hard work, honest dealings, and quiet sacrifice crumbling under the weight of bureaucratic indifference and personal judgment. He looked at their faces, impatient, dismissive, utterly lacking in empathy. He was just another problem to process, a glitch in their system, an old man who had failed by their definition of success. He felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was just a burden. Maybe he had been reckless. The thought was more crushing than any financial loss. Just as Elias, his shoulders slumped, began to turn away, defeated, a commotion erupted near the entrance. A sharp, authoritative voice cut through the hum of the office. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Mr. Harrison. I was told he might be here." All heads turned. Standing at the door was a man in a perfectly tailored suit, radiating an aura of power and importance. He was accompanied by two other well-dressed individuals. He wasn't someone who waited in line. Mr. Harrison, startled, quickly smoothed his tie and bustled forward, abandoning his lecture to Elias. "Mister? I'm Harrison, the supervisor. How can I help you?" Harrison asked, fawning slightly. The man in the suit was tall, with piercing blue eyes and silver hair that spoke of distinction, not age. He looked around the office, his gaze sweeping over the waiting area, the desks, the faces, and then his eyes landed on Elias. For a moment, the man froze. His expression shifted from one of polite inquiry to stunned disbelief, then rapidly to something akin to reverence. He ignored Harrison's outstretched hand. "Elias!" The name was spoken with a mixture of awe and deep concern. Elias, still reeling from Harrison's words, looked up, His weary eyes met the sharp blue gaze. Recognition dawned slowly, then flooded his face with a mixture of surprise and something like shame. Senator. Senator Adams? The man, indeed Senator John Adams, one of the most powerful figures in state politics, strode past the dumbfounded Harrison as if he wasn't there. He reached Elias in a few quick steps, his hand extended, then seemingly on instinct, he brought his hand up in a sharp, respectful salute. The entire office went silent. Brenda's jaw dropped. Mr. Harrison stopped mid-sentence, his eyes wide with disbelief. A United States senator saluting this old man. Senator Adams lowered his hand, his face etched with profound respect and concern. Elias, my God, what are you doing here? Before Elias could answer, Harrison, regaining some semblance of composure, sputtered, Senator, sir, this man, he's an applicant for assistance. There seems to be some issue with his. Senator Adams cut him off with a look that could freeze water. Applicant? Assistance. He turned back to Elias, his voice gentle now, but filled with a controlled intensity that commanded attention. Elias, is everything all right? Are you in need? Elias hesitated, his ingrained pride warring with the reality of his situation and the unexpected, overwhelming recognition.
I'm managing, John.
Just going through some paperwork. Senator Adams looked around the sterile, dismissive office, his eyes narrowing as they met Brenda's and Harrison's stunned faces. He took in Elias's worn clothes, his quiet demeanor, the way he had been standing alone, clearly being dismissed. He didn't need Elias to say more. He understood. Going through paperwork? Senator Adams repeated, his voice hardening slightly as he addressed the room, though his eyes remained fixed on Elias. This isn't just paperwork. This is Elias Vance. He turned back to the now pale caseworker and supervisor. His voice, while not loud, carried the weight of immense authority and barely contained fury. Do you two, do any of you, have any idea who this man is? Brenda and Harrison exchanged terrified glances. He said he was Elias Vance, sir, Harrison stammered, the former ranch owner, but his application details were unusual. Senator Adams let out a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. Unusual? His details are the history of a genuinely great man. You dismissed him? You called him a burden? Reckless. The last word was spat out, directed squarely at Harrison. He gave all his money away. Brenda interjected weakly, trying to justify her earlier contempt. He gave his fortune away, saving this community. Senator Adams' voice rose, filling the room. He kept countless families afloat during the crash when the banks turned their backs. He funded essential services when the state budget failed. He single-handedly established and maintained the Fallen Heroes Fund for over 15 years, using his personal fortune to ensure that no military family from this county ever faced financial ruin after sacrifice. Do you know how many homes he saved? How many children he put through college? How many veterans received crucial medical care because Elias Vance quietly, relentlessly, year after year, wrote the checks? Just last week, I heard he sold his last piece of land, his sentimental favorite, the old pine property, to help a young veteran's child get a prosthetic and his mother with rent. That was everything he had left. He turned back to Elias, his expression softening again. Elias, why didn't you call me? Or any of us? Elias managed a weak smile. Didn't want to be a bother, John. Figured I could handle it. Handle it? Senator Adams ran a hand through his silver hair, looking utterly exasperated and deeply moved. Elias, you handled the weight of this entire community on your shoulders for decades. You stood by us, time and time again, with nothing but your word and your incredible generosity. Do you remember the drought of '98? When ranchers were facing ruin? Elias here didn't just offer advice. He quietly bought up feed at inflated prices and distributed it for free. The Pine Ridge Fire? He mobilized his entire ranch operation, risking his own property and life, to cut fire breaks and provide refuge for livestock and displaced families. And the Fallen Heroes Fund. My own nephew received support from it when he came back injured. You did that, Elias. You, and these people, called you reckless? Senator Adams turned back to the stunned staff, his eyes blazing with righteous anger. You are administering programs designed to help those in need. This man, he gestured to Elias, is the very embodiment of someone who should receive every single bit of assistance and honor this state can provide. Not because he's broke, but because why he is broke. He impoverished himself serving others, upholding the values you people are supposedly here to support. He stepped closer to Harrison, his voice low and menacing. Mr. Harrison, I want Mr. Vance's application personally handled by the highest authority in this office, immediately and with the utmost respect. I want every possible avenue of assistance explored, not to just cover his needs, but to recognize the lifetime of service he has given. Furthermore, I want a full review of the conduct of your staff, particularly the woman who just called him a burden and reckless. Do you understand me? Harrison, pale and trembling, nodded vigorously. Yes, Senator. Absolutely, sir. Right away. Brenda looked as if she might faint. The other staff members stared, horrified and humbled. They had seen only an old man in worn clothes. Senator Adams had revealed a titan of generosity, a quiet hero, a man whose poor financial decisions were in fact monumental acts of selfless giving. Senator Adams turned back to Elias, his demeanor softening instantly. He placed a hand gently on Elias's shoulder. Elias, come with me. You're not going to wait another minute in this line. And you're not going to worry about forms or applications. We'll get this sorted out properly. He guided Elias away from the desk, the office staff parting before them as if in the presence of royalty. As they walked towards a private office, Senator Adams continued speaking, not in anger now, but with genuine warmth and admiration. Elias, the town hasn't forgotten. The county hasn't forgotten. I haven't forgotten. There are so many people, so many families, who owe you everything. Your recklessness, as these fools called it, saved them. And now it's our turn to stand by you. He paused, looking at Elias with a thoughtful expression. You know, when I heard you sold Old Pine, I felt a pang. That land meant so much to you. My family always loved that old barn. We heard you sold it to help that young Marine's family. It was just typical Elias Vance. Always giving, he smiled, a genuine, warm smile. Well, my family and I, we've done all right for ourselves. And we've always believed in paying debts, especially debts of gratitude. We'd like to buy that property back, Elias. At a fair price, of course. More than fair. Consider it. Community investment. A place for you to, well, to just have a place. No strings attached. It should always have been yours. Elias stopped, tears welling in his eyes for the first time. Not tears of sorrow or pain, but of overwhelming relief, gratitude, and the profound feeling of being seen. After all the quiet years, all the unseen sacrifices, all the dismissive looks, someone finally saw him. Not the burden, not the reckless failure, but Elias Vance, the man of integrity, the quiet giver. He hadn't expected a jackpot, certainly not a financial one. His jackpot was this moment. The return of his dignity, the public vindication, the genuine respect from a man he admired, and the unexpected, incredibly generous offer that wasn't just about land, but about restoring a piece of his life, a symbol of who he was. He looked at Senator Adams, his voice thick with emotion. John, you don't have to. Yes, Elias, we do, Senator Adams said firmly but kindly. We absolutely do. It's the least we can do. Consider it. The county paying you back for the Fallen Heroes Fund. With interest, he grinned. And a small token for putting up with these bureaucratic speed bumps. They walked into the private office, leaving behind a stunned silence in the main hall. Harrison was already on the phone, his face pale, issuing urgent instructions. Brenda stood frozen, her face draining of color as the weight of her words and actions crashed down on her. The other applicants in the waiting area looked on, their expressions a mix of astonishment, reflection, and newfound respect for the quiet old man they had just witnessed being dismissed. The story of Elias Vance spread quickly through the office, through the town, a stark reminder that appearance is rarely the full story, and true worth is often hidden beneath a humble exterior. He received the assistance he needed, handled with care and respect, and Senator Adams was true to his word. The old pine property was returned to Elias, providing him not just with a place, but with the profound knowledge that his sacrifices had not been in vain, that his integrity was remembered, and that the community he had served so selflessly would, in the end, stand by him. His jackpot wasn't just financial. It was the restoration of his honor, the recognition of his quiet heroism, and the warmth of a community that finally saw the true value of the man who had given everything. This story is a testament to the power of hidden worth, the importance of looking beyond the surface, and the enduring value of quiet service and sacrifice. It reminds us that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in integrity, generosity, and the lives we touch. Never judge a book by its cover. Sometimes, the most ordinary-looking person carries the most extraordinary history. If this story inspired you to show respect to everyone, regardless of their appearance, please consider subscribing to my channel. Let's keep sharing stories that remind us of the best in humanity. Share this video if you believe in second chances and hidden heroes.